Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Daniel Umstead, host of the RNG radio show. Listen, I'm over the 250 marker, and I just got these amazing guests that continue to come on the show. But you know my stance. I got to run through the bio first. So he is a dedicated real estate entrepreneur who began his career as a pastor. He now owns and operates a title company, real estate brokerage, and a home renovation company with over $214 million in sales and more than 1,170 transactions. He brings extensive experience and a genuine passion for real estate. Despite his accomplishments, he remains humble and is committed to coaching and empowering others to achieve their own success in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you on the RNG radio show, Matt Paxson. Matt, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here as well. So ready to get this started. Excited.
Awesome. Now, I got a list of questions for you. Before we get started, can you tell me about, your journey as far as getting started from being a pastor, now this successful real estate entrepreneur?
Sure. Yeah. Real estate's one of those things where like you don't really need an education. It's like a formal education. You can get in it really with just a pen, a desk, a little home office, and off you go. So for me, like my journey to get to this point, I went to undergrad and then I went to graduate school, and then I actually pastored a couple churches for 10 years. And I thought at the time that that's what I wanted to do, is be a pastor. And there's things that I really enjoyed about pastoring. Like I enjoy public speaking. I enjoy connecting with people. I enjoy seeing people develop. But then there are things that went really slow, right? Like churches aren't built to like turn quickly. It's like a ship out at sea. You can't just turn it on a dime. And so that stuff really frustrated me. So I always had this entrepreneurial type itch, and I knew that I wanted to get eventually into real estate. And so I met a buddy while pastoring. We became really good friends. And we just both took the jump together. And so off we went. So that was kind of my journey from being a pastor for 10 years and serving people in that way to serving people via real estate. And I still guest preach and do some consulting for churches, but primarily I focus on my companies right now.
Okay, awesome. And then what started like as far as because I know from our conversations that you're starting to do coaching now more in real estate. What made you want to go from that shift to real estate to now doing coaching?
Yeah, I just think we've been doing this for about 10 years. We flipped over 1,000 homes. We started a title company. We started a brokerage. We've just kind of done a lot within the kind of ecosystem in the area that I live in, which is Fredericksburg, Virginia. And now I want to develop people. I want to help people. We've got a little bit more money than when we started, because when we started, we didn't have much. And so we want to help lend money. We want to help people develop their businesses in the way that we were helped in the very beginning. And I think that's an important thing for people to know is, you are who you surround yourself with. And in the very, very beginning, we didn't know anything. And we bought some curriculums from people that had no support beyond just the curriculum and the material. And we went to some seminars and the same thing. But eventually we found some partners who took us under their wing. They had a substantial amount of experience before us, and they coached us and they helped us get through it. And so I remember what that was like, having that support from people who were like, hey, well, I'm in it with you, right? And so that's what I want to offer to people, is just to see them succeed. When they win, I win. So it's mutually beneficial. So it's not all just, a gift of humanitarian effort here. Like I'm not just helping people out of altruism. So it's a win-win, but I enjoy seeing people develop. And I think I've got a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of experience, and I can help them succeed.
Awesome, man. Awesome. No, I'd love to hear that. And you're 1,000% correct on that. A lot of folks will say, like, hey, buy this real estate program and you'll be successful in the next 90 days or the next 60 days, and then there's no support or backing with it. It's just buy this course, follow these strict steps. But sometimes people get to step forward. It's like, well, what do I do now? I'm talking with this buyer. I'm not sure what my conversation is supposed to be.
Yes.
What is an avatar? And folks don't realize that, you need those steps and support along the way. So, thank you for sharing that. What do you contribute, like some key elements to your success in real estate?
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking off my last answer, I think the number one thing is actually accountability. Like most people, it's not just the head knowledge, because they can get that from books, watching YouTube videos, but it's accountability. because it's dry at times. It's hard at times. And you got to show up every day. You got to make those phone calls when you don't want to. You got to go on those appointments when you don't want to. You got to herd the contractors if you're flipping a home when it's difficult. You got to put in all that work, and you need accountability. So when I started in this business, as I mentioned, I had a business partner, and we were just each other's accountability, and we kind of yin and yang together. Like my strengths were, offset his weaknesses and vice versa. And I think that's really important. And if you don't have a business partner like I did, then what you need is somebody like me who can coach you, who can meet with you once a week, kind of hold your hand and get you through those first iterations. Because it's like building muscle memory. You just got to put in the reps. There's no two ways around it. It's like, I always give this analogy. It's like driving a race car. Like you could have the fastest race car out there, but if you don't know how to drive it, then it means nothing, right? Like you got to learn how to actually navigate and drive, through this crazy maze that we call real estate investing. So I think accountability would be the number one thing that I would say.
Okay, awesome. And you touched on a few points that I do want to address, as it relates to accountability, because I do hear that a lot, having that accountability partner, or of course having that coach. If folks are like, let's say, skeptic, it's like, this is the first time me hearing about Matt. They don't have an accountability partner. What other strategies could, one do to hold themselves accountable as they're going through this real estate journey and either getting to know more about investments or even continuing on in their field and practice?
Yeah, it's, you mean aside from having a coach?
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
I know a lot of folks are like, well, I've heard of coaches. I'm really not too fond of them. And then, of course, accountability partner. And I'm speaking to the introverts out there,
sure.
because a lot of folks are like, no, I want to do my own thing or I want to focus on my own tunnel. But they don't have anybody who's like checking in on them, like making sure, like, hey, did you do your 100 calls today? Hey, did you do those 5 visits that you say you were going to do? What could folks do, to still continue to hold themselves accountable? And I'm also asking for myself as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the old saying that birds of a feather flock together, and I think that's true. And so even if you are an introvert, you're still going to need to be around other people who are thinking in the same way that you are. So that then if you don't want to hire a coach, you don't want to go through a curriculum or be held accountable in that way, then I think you have to join a mastermind. You got to be a part of a RIA. You got to be surrounded by other people who are thinking like you're thinking, because you're going to be solving problems that the average person isn't going to be solving. I've had highs and lows in this business. I mean, more often than not, I've made money, but there are times when I've lost money. I mean, one year in particular, I thought I could, take over the world, and I went to another market 3 hours away, and I started flipping homes. And long story made short, I lost $1 million in that year. And so you're going to need to be around other people who are thinking like you're thinking and that care about the same things, right? I mean, the average person who isn't in real estate isn't thinking about lead generation, the acquisition side of things, the fix and flip type model, or buying and holding investments. They're not thinking about dispositions and what they can do to save a penny here and there. Like you have to be surrounded by other people. So if it's not through a coach, you got to join a group. That'd be my thought.
I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jem's word dropped, so make sure you do rewind the past 2 minutes. Um, as far as and you brought up kind of my next question as far as finding and acquiring properties. And I kind of touched on it, that avatar, which, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty much your ideal client that you're looking for as far as a buyer, or property wise if you're looking for A, B, C, or D type property. For you, Matt, though, what strategies do you recommend for like finding and acquiring keyword profitable real estate properties?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when we first got into the business over 10 years ago, the problem was different. So back then there was ample opportunity to buy, but no money. And so we were going around to every doctor, dentist, lawyer, trying to borrow hard money and piece it all together. But now the problem's completely inverted. There's ample money. You could just Google hard money lender anywhere, Arizona, Colorado, Virginia, and you're going to find a slew of people that will lend you money, but there's rare opportunities to buy. So we've done everything. There was a time when we first started, when I was standing on the side of the road holding a big sign. We've done the car toppers where it's like, we buy houses. We've done the bandit signs. Historically, we've also bought through the courthouse steps. which has been in the very beginning, that was where we bought a lot of properties. But you fast forward to today, we're really buying very little. One of the things that we're doing now that's really working is we use a service called 80/20, and they'll pull a list for us, and then we'll mail to that list. And the way that they pull that list is proprietary. Like, they don't tell you how they do it. You know, at one point I was going on to like List Source and trying to pull a list and put it together, and that was okay, but the results we're getting from 80/20 is way better. We're also getting a lot of good results from pre-foreclosures. So in our state, all the foreclosures have to be put in the newspaper. And so we'll go to those people before they get to the steps, and we'll try to buy their property. We've had a lot of success with probates. So, you know, that's all recorded at the courthouse. So we'll go down there, we'll pull the list, we'll send them a mailer, and it'll make the phone ring. And then probably the most steady thing that we've done for the last 10 plus years is just PPC. So we have a company that we work with. Like one of the things that we, in the very, very beginning, Matt was trying to be the PPC guy, which was horrible. Like, I don't know that I know a little bit about it. I read a book. I still have it somewhere, this big, thick Google book. I got in there, I was tinkering with it, and I got some results, but not like when we hired it to an actual expert, like a company that does this. And they've been with us for a really long time. And that just makes the phone ring, right? So when people Google, you know, sell house fast or we buy houses, you know, we rank number 1, number 2. And people click on the information, and that's how we get the lead. So those are kind of a 20,000 foot look at all the ways that we're buying properties these days. And of course, you get referrals, and people come back around, and you do a great job for people. And then they recommend a family member or a neighbor. They're like, yeah, you got to call Matt because he did what he said he was going to do. He showed up on time. He closed when he said he was going to close. You know, he's a great guy to work with, right? So you kind of get some repeat business, but by and large, it's PPC, courthouse steps, pre-foreclosures, those kind of things that yield the most results.
Okay. And for the folks who are probably like scrambling, trying to write down the information, PPC, could you give the definition of what that is?
Yeah, it's just pay per click. So it's when people Google like sell house fast or we buy houses, it's all the rankings. At the very top, you'll see where it says ads, and you want to rank high there. You also, if a good company will get you on Google My Business, where it ranks high there as well. So, and there's like backlinks that they do on your websites to help make it rank organically higher as well. That's called SEO optimization. That gives some results, but by and large, people just click on the ads at the top is what we have found.
All right, cool,
Yeah.
awesome. And then speaking of, you know, as far as with the SEO optimization and PPC contact information, how can folks actually get in contact with you to learn either more about your coaching program or even just connect with you on social media?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me would be just go to facebook.com/Matthew Paxson. I'll spell that for you real quick, but
Yeah.
I'm setting up some other back-end coaching things as I hope to launch a nationwide coaching program. But what I'm looking for up front is just 10 students. When I go nationwide, those people won't have access to me as these 10 will. So I just really want 10 students. I'll handhold you through the whole thing. I'll help you build your entire systems, your back-end dashboards, everything. Like, we'll build it, and we'll build it together. We'll meet weekly if needed. We'll meet more than just once a week. We'll meet a couple times, but I'm looking for 10 students to kind of take them to the next level. So it's facebook.com/Matthew, MATTHEW. And then my last name is Paxson, PAXSON, kind of like John Paxson on the Bulls back in the day. So
Okay.
Matthew Paxson.
Yeah. All right, cool. Awesome. Appreciate that, Matt. And we talked about a little bit, or I should say you had brought about, you know, as far as fixing and flipping properties. When folks are, you know, the first time doing this, and 9 times out of 10 that I've come across is people are inheriting this property, you know, it's being passed out to them through a family member, or, you know, it's either give it to them. What are some important factors that they should be considering, you know, when they're renovating that property?
Yeah, renovations, that's kind of the tough part, because what we always tell people is you win on the buy, right? Like, you have to buy it at the right number, right? And we use a formula, and you know, the most popular formula is 70% minus repairs. So you take the ARV times 0.7 minus repairs. But where people always forget though is with the repairs, there's cost creep. So you might scope a project and say it's going to take 40,000 in renovations. Before you know it, it's like 50, 60,000. In fact, that's what got me when I went to that other market and lost all that money is I would look at the books and I'm like, wait a minute, I only budgeted 50,000 in repairs but I'm already in it for 90,000. Like, how's that possible? But I was in a different market. I had contractors going squirrely on me. They were doing double work. They were charging me for stuff they weren't doing. I mean, it was just a whole slew of errors. So what you have to do is when you're getting those repairs, you got to get that number right and get it dialed in, because people will go crazy on you. Like a plumber will say, hey, I'm showing up Tuesday at 10 a.m. and he just doesn't show up. Well, then that domino can't be knocked over because you're waiting on that plumber to get done. And then the one beyond that, like you need drywall, you need the bathroom put back together, you need all this other stuff done, but that plumber's got to show up and move those pipes and do what he said he was going to do. So you just got to get people you trust. You're going to go through a lot of people up front. You're going to, just discard people that are just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then eventually you'll get a tight ship. But that's where, like, showing up to a RIA, being plugged in with other investors, they're going to tell you, they're going to say, oh yeah, this guy's good, trust him. Oh yeah, stay away from these guys. They charge you too much, or they'll scope it up front at this amount, but then they'll do rework. And then before you know it, it's way more. So you just got to go through people. But once you get through, the first kind of batch, you'll have a core group of people that you trust. And then from there, you're just kind of always trying to add to the bullpen, because at one point when we started, my business partner and I, we were like, look, if we can do 1 to 2 of these a month, we'll be set for life. Right. And before I knew it, Daniel, we were doing like 10, 15, 20. At one point, we were doing 25 properties renovate. We were buying 25 a month. So imagine that. Like, it takes about 4 months to wash inventory out. So like, imagine the inventory. Like, we had over 100 properties on the books at any one time. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of contractors. It's a lot of fix and flips. Right. So it just, some of that's trial and error. Like, as you go along, you're going to get a better bullpen. But if you want to scale up, you're going to need a deep bullpen to kind of fill those other properties. So does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And man, I wanted to point out something and switch gears a little bit with the mindset. A lot of folks, come into this business or either wanted to do fix and flip, renovating, or even buying up homes and thinking like, all right, I'm gonna make a lot of money on this, or I'm gonna make some money on this. But they have those dark days, plumber didn't show up, electrician is running behind, the buyer is, being finagling. What can somebody do, on those dark days? It might be sunny outside, but regarding this project right here, right now, pretty much things are just going up in the air and it's becoming sugar honey iced tea all over the place. How does somebody overcome that? How does somebody overcome that anxiety and to pretty much say the least, that depression, because it is a depression mind state. It's like, hey, I had 50,000 budgeted. Now I'm almost close to double. Where am I pulling this money from? I got to pull from other resources, or I got to dip into my savings. So, you've been a successful real estate entrepreneur during those times that it was like frustrating. How did you overcome that?
Well, that's a great question, because I mean, the overarching answer is don't give up. Like, just don't give up. Don't quit. It's like Churchill's famous thing. He's like, never give in, never give in, never give in. Like, just don't give in, right? You just got to keep going. But like what I always tell people, like if we were family or friends, there's a ramp into real estate, and like you might not be serving your best interest by jumping into fix and flips right away. So what I tell people is like ramp into it if you need to, meaning this, like wholesale, like get a couple deals under contract, talk with sellers, get comfortable doing that, get comfortable putting it under contract, understanding how the process works. And then once you get a cash reserves, then jump into it. Like, for instance, I had a guy call me the other day. There's a house that partially burnt down in a community, in a lake community, like 10 minutes away from here. And so he called me and he's like, hey, I want you to buy this property. I'm wholesaling it. I want you to buy it for 75,000. So I go and look at it, and it was in bad shape. Like, the fire had destroyed the trusses, the roof was all tore up, the inside was tore up. But I ran the numbers, and I figured it would take me about 80 or 90,000 to get it righted, and I could sell it for X amount and make money off it. Well, so I agree to a 75,000. Well, I don't know what he has it under contract for, because he didn't send it to me. I always tell people, you can or can't, I don't care. If 75 works for me, that's my number. But, I had no idea what he had it under contract for. So he wanted to wait to the closing table, which is fine. So we get to the closing table, and he has it under contract for $25,000. So literally at the closing table, I wrote a check to him for 50,000. for the seller 25,000, right? And then I'd buy it and I'd do my whole thing on it. I think I ended up making like $34,000 on the property, right? But that guy was in the best possible spot because he made 50,000 in a 2-week period because, I can close quickly, and that's when the seller wanted to close. And it took me, I had to go through permits, I had to wrangle contractors. I ended up making just over 30, but it took me like 5 or 6 months to go do that. So who was in a better spot there? Clearly he was, right? So I always tell people, like, if you don't have the money up front, don't bury yourself up front, because you're basically banking on the fact that you're going to hit a home run right off the rip, right? Which you might do. A lot of people do. If you have a good coach, you probably have a strong chance of doing, but if you don't have to, build yourself into it. Like that guy put 50,000 in his business bank account, and he's probably got a bunch of other deals too. And he's building a nest egg. Then when he goes and starts fixing and flipping, he's got margin for error because it's going to happen. Like I bought one the other day at, it was a courthouse steps, and I bought it without having any idea of the inside because you can't get into the properties ahead of time. So I get in there and the house again was all burnt up and I had no idea what happened. The neighbors come over and tell me the story. Long story made short, the guy lit his house on fire and then he hung himself in the attic, right? The whole thing burnt down. I mean, it was just a train wreck, but I had no idea. So I get into the thing thinking I've got all this margin, but it was a calamity of errors. Not only was the inside had to be rebuilt, the foundation had to be rebuilt, the septic had to be moved. I mean, it was everything. Anyways, I ended up losing $5,000 on the deal. I put 120,000 in renovations into the property and I lost 5,000. I thought going into it, I was going to make like 50,000 on it. But that's the gamble you take in real estate. Sometimes you don't know until you start tugging on the string what else you have to do. It's kind of like buying an older home, which I would advise you not to do. Don't buy anything 1930s and older because you think you're like, oh, I'm going to put 50,000 in renovations. You start tugging on that string, you pull the wall apart because it's got paneling on it and you want to put drywall up. Then you realize, oh, I need insulation. Oh, I need new plumbing because it's got the old pipes. Oh, I need new electrical. Before you know it, you're just rebuilding the entire house. So anyways, I would tell people stay clear of the older houses if you're going to get into fix and flip in the beginning. Buy something 1960s and newer, probably. Buy it on public utilities. Don't buy on septic. That's exactly where you get, most of the time, that's where you get screwed at in real estate, is when you buy on a septic. Sewer you can fix, that's easy or easier. And then buy something you think you can get in and out of pretty quick. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I'm writing down even just notes for myself. As far as though with the success story, because you just gave one of the amazing wholesaler who made probably somebody's salary within 30 days. For you yourself, any success story that you want to talk about that occurred in real estate through your 1,170 plus transactions?
As far as our deals that we've done?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we could go through a whole litany. I mean, as I mentioned, we've won more than we've lost, which is good. That's the name of the game. We've lost on a few, but by and large, we've won on a bunch. And what's really cool is when you help people out, like real estate investors, and this is how we position ourselves. And if you're working on your PPC and your marketing, our phrase, the thing that we use is solutions oriented. Like I'm a solutions provider. Like I can help you in a plethora of ways, right? I'm not a piranha just trying to take advantage of people. Like I'm literally giving people solutions. So like I have a lady who bought her house probably 3 months ago. She's had some really bad medical concerns. Her husband lost his eyesight, so he's got medical concerns as well. And their house was in really bad shape. Like I'm also a real estate agent. I own a brokerage. Like I could have listed the property, but they would have had to have come to they would have had to have fixed a bunch of stuff. But I gave them basically top dollar for what an investor could yield, or investment number could yield. Then I let them stay in the property for 60 days so they could have the money post closing, and then they could, go buy another property. Like, and this lady still calls me. She in fact called me just last week. She's like, Matt, I really want you to come to Thanksgiving, right? Like I build rapport with these people. And when I get in front of them, like kneecap to kneecap, I'm actually giving them solutions, right? Like I'll walk through it. I'm like, look, we could put this thing on the market. Here's where we could put it at, but here's the caveat with it. But if you were trying to get as much as you possibly could, this is potentially the way, but you might have to do a bunch of repairs. And then I'm giving them like 3 or 4 other solutions. One of those happens to be, hey, I'll buy it all cash. Here's the number where I need to buy it at for it to make sense. You tell me what works best for you. So I'm not pushy. I'm just providing solutions. And when you do that, like people leave, glowing reviews. They'll call you and invite you to Thanksgiving and so forth. So, I could go through just from the last 10 years, over 1,000 properties we fixed and flipped. I mean, there's so many people who will call me back. Like one lady called me back, she wanted to sell the house because her son had committed suicide in it. And it was really a place that she just couldn't be anymore because all the memories, and it was really tough. So we worked out a solution for her that was a win-win-win, right? Like she was able to stay in the property or get her stuff out of the property. What we did is we kind of overpaid for it. Because I mean, I'm like standing in the driveway crying with this lady as she's telling me the story and how emotional it was and what she needed to get from it. So we satisfied a creditor for her. We overpaid for it. And then I shared in the profits with her. Like we worked a creative deal. I said, okay, I'm going to go in here and gut this whole thing. I'm going to put it back together. And then when I sell it, like I need to at least get this baseline, but anything above it, I'm going to split in half with you. She's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, because if we were family, this is what I would do. And I treat everybody like their family, and so she ended up walking away with way more than what she expected. It was just a great scenario. So that's the cool thing about real estate is there's no one way to do it. Like you could skin the cat 1,000 different ways. And once you understand the different ways to do it, then when you're sitting kneecap to kneecap, you just unpack it in a way. And it's just, you can make it a win. Almost every deal, you can make a win-win for both the seller and for you.
That's incredible, Matt. I appreciate your passion, and love in this industry. One thing that set me apart, because I did start off doing wholesaling. I actually missed out on 6,000 because I didn't have a coach. I had the pretty much the seller say like, "Hey, you're the one who called me first, so I'm willing to give it to you." I'm like, "Okay," but she had wanted an earnest money deposit, and I was just like, "I don't have that." And meanwhile, the person that I was working with, he was like, "Wait, why did you let her go? I would have worked with you. We would have came up with something." So, but 6,000 gone long and dear. That's fine. Um, but you live and you learn. One thing that came about, when I was starting my real estate journey, and I thank Chris Hofstall for that. I shout him out. Compass right now. He's at Compass right now. But whole different story because he was at Keller Williams. I joined Keller Williams, then he left. But nonetheless, his key thing was it's a relationship. It's a relationship business. You are
Yes.
connecting with individuals. You are, as you pointed out, kneecap to kneecap. You're building rapport with them. You're getting invited to Thanksgiving dinner. With that being said and all, I wanted to know, Matt, because folks are, of course, going to get in contact with you. They're going to reach out to you about the coaching program. But I also get investors on the show as well, as far as listening in. If somebody does have, that deal that they want to work with you on, what is your avatar? What do you look for as far as your next property? And are you focused just in Fredericksburg, Virginia, or other markets as well?
Yeah, our avatar has kind of shifted, as I mentioned, because the market has shifted.
Mm.
The kind of broad stroke that you could paint with it is distressed sellers. Like that's really what you're looking for, is someone who is motivated to sell. And this is part of what I coach people on, is like you can tell if someone's a prospect or a suspect right away. Like I've probably had 10,000 phone calls with people over the last decade, because you don't buy every property, but you have a ton of phone calls and then follow-up calls. And it doesn't take but like 50 phone calls to realize within 30 seconds if someone's a prospect or a suspect. And that's really important, because if you spend a whole lot of time chasing a suspect, you're going to waste so much time, right? They'll say things like, "Oh, I wouldn't sell it for unless I got top dollar. Oh yeah, I'm thinking maybe 5 years down the road I'll sell it." Like that, you just pick up on these things, like, and there's no motivation. So don't waste your time there, right? Like you might be able to get something out of it, but probably not, but maybe, right? But if you go after a prospect, right, they're 100% motivated, and they say things like, "Man, if I could sell yesterday, yeah, I get it. My house needs repair and I probably have to sell it for less than market value. Like, hey, can you come over Thursday at 10?" Like they're very motivated, and you can tell right away. There's just a different energy in the phone call, right? Those people, lean into those, get them on the hook. Don't hang up the phone unless you get an appointment set up, because if not, they'll call the next guy and then he'll get an appointment and then he'll get in front of you. So like, the overarching thing here is like, you just tell the difference between a suspect and a prospect. And then your avatar does kind of change. Our SEO and PPC guy, the company that manages our online presence, they've got all the data. Like I think currently our data points are like 35 to 50 is our age group. It's an income of 75,000 or less. I mean, they got all the data points, but I let them deal with all that because they just make the phone ring. People submit offers or they call. They deal with all of that. What I'm primarily concerned about and what I train my team to do is identify the difference between a suspect and a prospect. Don't waste your time on suspects. Go hard after the prospects. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I really, wanted to put out this premise because you have those people who are kicking tires, especially when they are looking at coaching programs or even those, future business partners. So I just wanted to make it clear. And even for myself as well, this business, I always say I don't have a ton of transactions that I've done in the past 5 years. But when I tell you my network has exploded since I've got my real estate license, is a whole other different ballgame. So, and I know that's going to be to my advantage. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
and let me just make a quick caveat off that. I do think being an investor and an agent is beneficial. And that's
1000%.
not to be overlooked because the vast majority, let's say out of every 10 leads you get, maybe one or two of those will turn into investment deals, right? But the other eight kind of get lost in the queue. And that's because they owe too much or they want too much. But if you're an agent, or you partner with an agent, then you can still monetize that. In fact, that's why we started our brokerage, or we actually bought a brokerage, is to monetize those leads. So like if the phone rings and I'm talking to you on the phone, let's say your home is worth 300,000 but you bought it 2 years ago and you owe, 260 on it because you put a little bit down, you still owe 260. Well, there's not enough margin there for an investor to buy that deal, right? Like you couldn't even close on it on the front end and the back end, let alone fix it up. There's just no margin there. So, but what we do is, it's like, hey, Harry homeowner, I understand that you bought the home just a couple years ago and you still owe 260,000 on it. Unfortunately, the investing side isn't the right solution, but what is the right solution is listing it. In fact, and then I go into my whole listing presentation and we get, on average, we were closing about 40 listings a year just off of those kind of conversations. So if you're an agent investor, you're in a great spot. If you're not an agent in whatever market that you're in, you need to find an investor-friendly agent to work with because it'll be reciprocal. They'll bring you deals. Like they'll call you and say, hey, Daniel, I got this deal. It's got foundation repair. We're factoring about 38,000 to fix it. The seller doesn't have the money to do it. They understand they got to come off the ask price plus a little bit more. Do you want to buy it? And you run your numbers, and if it works, great. So like that relationship is going to be really important. If it's not you, you got to find someone that is an agent.
Oh, Matt, the gems were dropped today. Thank you so much just for even that. I still got some more questions, but I'm just appreciative of, just what you're putting out today. I really, really appreciate that. Backing up a little bit, you talked about being, a former pastor. How does your experience, influence your approach to business and coaching, being a former pastor? Folks that I've talked to, they were either former engineers coming into the business. Other folks, were one of the folks on my team right now. She was in collections and she, came over to the real estate side, and she says that has helped her, especially when it comes to negotiations, of course, getting over those no's. You being a former pastor, how has that, helped influence real estate and your coaching?
Yeah, I think it's what you touched on earlier, where you talked about building rapport. This is a people business. And you have to understand people a little bit. And I think being a pastor helps me do that. But I think in general, like you have to build rapport and genuinely care. Like when you talk to someone and you can just kind of tell like, they don't really care. They're not really like, they're just kind of in it for themselves. And your gut tells you something's off. Well, what I always tell people is you have to genuinely care about people because you're going to show up and it's the same scenarios that I had. It's like, a mom just lost her son to suicide and she doesn't want to stay in the home, or, there's a medical concerns, or there's a whole slew of reasons why people have to sell. But at the end of the day, they're people, and like people matter. And so like when you show up, it's like, you want to build rapport. Like as I'm walking up the driveway, if I don't know anything about them, I'm looking at the bumper stickers on their car. I'm trying to read the property. It's like, oh, they're Redskins fans. And I walk in, I'm like, I'm a Redskins fan, like you're building rapport with people as you walk into the foyer, and it's like, you see a trip to Disney. It's like, oh yeah, I took my kids to Disney a couple years ago. How was your trip? It's all about people, right? And you have to say what you mean, and mean what you say. Like, so if I say, hey, I can close in probably 4 days, it's all cash. The only delay is a title company. They have to pull a title. Like, that has to mean something, right? Because I'm dealing human to human with people, and they might need that money. And it's like, yes, I can perform on what I'm saying. But what I find in this business, especially in the wholesaling world, is a lot of people overpromise and way under deliver, right? So like, for instance, like a wholesaler will put a house under contract for way more than what it can actually be wholesaled for. And then they'll wait to the end of that contract, and then they notify the seller. They're like, yeah, I can't really perform. I'm dissolving this contract, right? Well, the seller's already planning to move. They've already thought that was a done deal, this happens to me all the time because people, I own probably the largest company in our area, or at least one of them. And people call me all the time for wholesale deals. To use my numbers earlier, if a home's worth 300,000 and they put it under contract at 260, there's no margin for them to wholesale that to me at all. And so, but they'll put them under contract at 260, and then they'll shop it around, and they can't do it. And then they'll go back to the seller, and they're like, yeah, if you read here in paragraph 4, I can dissolve this contract without penalty, blah, blah, blah. And then the seller's like, wait, what? Like, we've just waited 30 days. And now you're going to tell me this? I've already planned to move. I've got my other house. I need the money from this for that, So in the end, it's a people business. Your word has to mean something, and treat people fairly, like with respect and dignity, because they're going to be going through a lot of really traumatic situations, and you're just there to provide solutions. It's like, how can I help? Sometimes I tell people, I'm not your best option. Like, here are the options I can provide, but really this is your best option, and that's not me. And let me put you in contact with that person, right? Like, I'm just here to provide solutions because I care about people, and maybe my past experiences inform that, or maybe it's just who I am. But if you're in this space, it's all about people. It's people. Like, that should be your heartbeat. It's like people. Just love on people, serve them where you can, and you'll be rewarded handsomely for it.
Oh, I love that. The honesty part of it all, Matt, it just gets you further because the moment that you lie, the moment that you're being deceitful, it just comes back to you.
Yeah.
You lie as far as trying to sell the property for a higher price, or even being a realtor, you lie about like, oh yeah, tops in the area are like at 350, but you're like, well, you've got a bathroom unlike anybody else. We could definitely get it on the market for 500K. And, instead over promising and continuous lying. And, it leaves everybody in a stuck position because if anything, this pandemic should have taught us is that people have things going on. We are not robots, everybody has lives, everybody has certain circumstances. People are either losing jobs, they're losing loved ones,
Yeah.
and we're getting to a point, or excuse me, we're growing to a point in society where, not saying that, although they are listening, Google and Alexa, but it's becoming more, predictable as far as when it comes to, certain things maybe selling or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're all still human. At the end of the day, we all still have feelings. We all still have emotions. And when you connect with somebody on those emotions, on those feelings, and building that rapport, you get so much further. So let me get off my pedestal for that.
I agree.
Before I let you go, I got a couple more questions. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting out in real estate investing? And this is why I love doing this podcast, because I've had people come back to me and say like, hey, Dan, first time I heard about real estate, what's through your show? And I'm like, well, you're not doing enough Googling, but thank you so much. But Matt, what advice would you give to somebody, who's just getting started in real estate and they're not sure where to turn outside of getting in contact with you, of course?
Yeah, it would go back to the kind of the initial discussion that we had. Like, you have to be surrounded by people who are thinking the same way. And what I would do, I would hire a coach. I mean, if Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer of all time, still has a coach, then I probably still need a coach, right? Like, we all could use coaching. It doesn't matter who you are in whatever space that you're in. So find a coach. It doesn't have to be me, but find somebody who's a little bit further down the road who can help navigate through all the obstacles and get you where you need to go. I mean, when I started out, my goal was to, as I mentioned, to flip one a month. And before I knew it, we were doing 25 a month. There is no doubt in my mind that none of that would have been possible if I hadn't had partnered with these other two guys that we partnered with, because they had already done hundreds, thousands of flips at that time, and they were able to lend expertise and knowledge. You know, they just helped us get through it all. Even when I overextended to another market, they were still partners at the time. They helped navigate through all that. We lost $1 million, but it could have been way worse. Like if the market had corrected on me, I literally wouldn't be sitting here today. Like everything would have been gone. Right. So you just need somebody to mentor you. You know, the old saying is something like, if you want to go, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. Right. And so go on the journey with other people and they'll become best friends. You'll do life with people in a way that you never thought. You know, there'll be highs and lows, but your business will literally start to trend upward, and you'll look back in 3 to 5 years and you're like, man, how did I just do that? And you'll realize that it's because you went with people, whether it's in a mastermind, whether it's with a coach. You just need somebody to kind of help get you up there, because they're down the road a mile or two further than you, and they're going to bring you up to where they're at. It's the kind of that phrase that we used earlier, like birds of a feather flock together. Like be with other people who are thinking the same way and have the same mindset as you. You know, you are a sum total of the top 5 people you spend time with. Spend time with people who are thinking like you. When you mention Robert Kiyosaki's book, they're like, yes, right? And they're helping you think through it. You know, they're holding you accountable to things that you said you were going to do. They're kind of seeing around the bend, and they're like, look, you could buy this one, but if you do, you're going to be in a lot of problems because it was built in 1920 and it's going to have all these issues, and look at the comps and the market here and the interest rates. They're going to see around the bend and help, hopefully, you know, get you around some of those errors that otherwise you would have went right into, lost a bunch of money, wasted a bunch of time, maybe got burnt out, left the industry. But if you had a coach, I think you can get through those things, and you can go make a handsome living. I mean, if I always tell people, like, you know, if you're working with me, like in 3 months, if you don't have 5 deals locked up, we've done something wrong. I mean, more the better, but you know, at least 5 deals. But as you go along, like, you know, one guy was, because I've helped a few people just on the side throughout the years. One guy was like, yeah, if I could make, what did he tell me, like 12,000 a month, I'll be set for life. It didn't take long. He was making 20, 30, 40,000. You know, we just set the bar high. It's like, no, here's what we want to make. We want to make 50,000 a month in your net income, not just gross. Like, this is your income. And we just set the bar high and go for it. You know, you might not make 50, maybe you're at 25, but 25,000 a month is a great income, right? Right. And then, but it's not just with fixing and flipping. Maybe it's with buying an Airbnb. Maybe it's with buying rentals and so forth. And I can show people how to do that. I don't know everything. I know just a little bit, right? I've got some experience in those areas, but let's go get it. Let's go make a grip of money and have fun doing it while we're doing it.
Matt, I appreciate you, value you so much for being on the podcast today, on this episode as well. Matt, before I let you go, outside of getting in contact with you with your social media info, if you could drop that again for me, anything else you want to leave with the audience today?
Yeah, I would just kind of, this is on a very personal level, but, you know, I would say that it's important to be holistic in your approach. I mentioned to Dan kind of offline that I'm going through a divorce, which is, you know, probably the worst thing I've ever gone through. It's been a 2-year-long train wreck, and I won't get into all the reasons why, but, you know, this isn't what I wanted. It wasn't something I expected, but it is what it is. But like, if I look back and if I just take an honest assessment at things, you know, there's probably areas of my life that I neglected because I was so focused on business and succeeding there. When I wasn't getting the respect at home, I would get it in the business world and through my peers because we were doing well. And I probably focused on those things. And so what I want to do is I want to find people who want to get to their goal intact as a whole person, right? Like, and that's all areas of life. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's relational, it's intellectual, it's financial. Most coaches only focus on the financial, and that's important, right? But there is a whole slew of things, right? It's, what about your physical life? Are you working out? Are you in shape? Are you doing the things that you need to do? What about intellectually? Are you surrounded by people? Are you learning? Relational, who are the top 5 people you're spending time with? Spiritual, like I'm a believer in Christ. I believe that nothing's going to change in that area. And I want people to kind of have this holistic approach to getting where they're going to go. So what I want to do is find people who just don't want the static, like help me financially, because that's the easy one out of all the things. Like if you come to me and you're like, Matt, I want to make 50,000 a month for the rest of my life going forward. It's going to take a ramp. It's going to take a lot of work, some risk, some luck, right, to get to that. But that's easy to do. But what I want is the holistic approach, like well-rounded, your life is intact. Maybe your marriage is strong and whole, more whole than it ever had been before. Your relationships are strong and there's a foundation there physically, intellectually, all the areas of life that really matter. And so that's what I'm going after. So if you partner with me, like I'm going to challenge you on all these levels, and I'm going to be speaking from my mistakes, things that I did wrong, because I want people to kind of thrive, not just survive, like thrive in life, like get to where you want to be and like be a great person, influence the world, change the world, have a great family, a great marriage, great relationships, but just thrive in it. So it's a holistic approach. And I've been teaching a lot of leadership development for probably 20 years now, just not beyond or beyond just real estate. But when I was pastoring before, I did a lot of leadership coaching. And so I'm bringing all that stuff into it. So I'm going to help people like take that next step, develop that inner person and become the person that you're meant to be, and like go be an influencer, go change the world, even if that world is just the people that work for you or your marriage or your friends that you have. Like be a whole person. Don't have, if there's 4 tires in that car, like one of mine was probably flat, if I'm being honest. Now that doesn't excuse her behavior and the reasons why we're in this whole divorce thing to begin with. But if I had a mulligan and could go back, I would have tended to that relationship more. But I didn't because of a variety of reasons. But I have to own what I could have done better. And I don't want the next person to be in that same spot. So it's a holistic approach. That's what I'm going after. I'd love to partner with you. I love to see people succeed. So yeah, I'm looking for 10 people. I'm going to screen them. I'm going to be very selective. You got to be ready to go today. You got to be ready to jump in. You got to be all in. But I'm going to find those 10 people. I'm going to handhold them, and it's going to be a great adventure.
Matt, I value, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. The gems that you dropped today, the info, and just your heart in this podcast. I'm not going to point out any episodes, but I'm pretty sure if folks look at the past 250, there may be some transactional ones in there where it's like, oh, they're just talking about themselves and their business, and that's that. But I still love them all. But to be open, with your heart and personal as well, says a lot. So, Matt, I value and appreciate you for that. Definitely looking forward to having you come back on the podcast.
Anytime.
Talk
Let me know,
about
Dan.
more growth and business, as well as taking the program nationally. One question I did forget, and ladies and gentlemen, this will be my last question, I promise. It is 2024 right now. 2029, where is Matt Paxson? Where's the coaching business? Where's the real estate business? What do you foresee yourself for the future as far as a vision?
Yeah, well, I think fast forward a couple years down the road, I do want a nationwide coaching program because I can help people do this. Like people talk about creative ways to buy real estate. I'm literally sitting in a $1 million plus home, my personal residence that I bought as a sub 2. And people are like, sub 2s? Well, like, how do you not know what a sub 2 is? Like, this is a game changing thing. Like, I want to teach people how to do creative real estate, how to do traditional fix and flip, how to buy and hold and those kind of things. So I want a nationwide program of people where there's accountability, where there's a family type feel, where there's, life on life kind of feel. So that's where I see myself. I still have my brokerage. I still have the title company. I still have all the things going locally. I'll still be building a rental portfolio, but also helping people do the same. So that's my plan. I just want to travel and connect with people that want to see their lives improve. And I'm talking about anybody. This could be a stay-at-home mom. It could be the guy getting out of the military who has no hope, who's like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I got back from serving my country and those skills don't necessarily translate into a job here that I'm comfortable doing, and they're maybe depressed or whatever. Maybe the guy going through a divorce whose life is getting wrecked because of decisions out of his control, or the person that's stuck in a job that's like, man, is this really what I'm meant for? Like, I'm just punching a time clock and doing the 9 to 5. Like, those are the people, those are the stories that I want to impact. So you fast forward down the road, I want a whole plethora of those stories where lives have been changed and people are like, thank you. And it's like, no, thank you, because the friendship and the life on life meant so much more to me maybe than them, but their lives in the process had been changed. So that's where I want to be. That's what I want to be doing. I want to be focused on coaching, seeing lives change all through real estate. And real estate's like the last great untouched bastion that the government hasn't gotten in and messed with. Like anybody can do it. Like, listen, anybody can do it. I'm just some poor kid from Ohio. Like I don't have any special pedigree. I didn't come from anything. Nobody gave me anything, but real estate enabled me to like kind of begin to climb the financial ladder, and anybody can do it. You just need someone to show you. And I want to show a whole slew of people, Dan, how to do it. So that's my goal.
I love that, man. Love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast, man. Truly value, and definitely, of course, looking forward to having you come back on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. And I mean, let me know anytime. I'd love to come back. You keep doing what you're doing, man. I've been looking at you online and it's impressive. So this is going to go places. So you just keep doing it, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to the RNG Radio Show. Be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes and future content. If you'd like to learn more, visit us at danielumstead.com. Stay blessed, my fellow millionaires.